Hello everyone, it is I, the Rambling Collector, and today I am back with another Warhammer 40,000 book review for all of you, and today I will be covering something which I'm a little bit mixed on. Today I will be talking about the Mephiston Trilogy, but more importantly, Mephiston, Blood of Sanguinius, and Mephiston, Revenant Crusade by Darius Hinks. But before I do, I want to give a little context as to who the BloodAngels are for those of you who do not have any knowledge of Warhammer 40k. So, let's get started. So to put this simply, the BloodAngels are a faction of the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marines who serve the Imperium of Man. However, these guys are unique because they stand out for the fact that they have twin curses. They're more commonly known as space vampires, but the curses that they are afflicted with include the Red Thirst, which obviously leans into the vampiric side of them, with their need to drink blood. But the second one is in fact called the Black Rage, and this one actually occurred due to the death of their Primarch, Sanguinius, during the Horus Heresy. Now, the Black Rage is something where people will believe that they are Sanguinius during his final hours, during the Horus Heresy. So everyone around them they see as an enemy, as Horus, and it drives them into a blind rage. So, in all honesty, this makes them far more interesting vampires than, say, sparkly Edward Cullen over here. So what makes Mephiston so fascinating of a character is the fact that he is a blood angel who has not only overcome what is the Red Thirst, but he's one of the few who has actually come out of the Black Rage. Originally, Mephiston was actually known as Calistarius, one of the blood angels who was under the Black Rage, yet somehow through a crusade on Armageddon, he was able to come out of the Black Rage and thus renamed himself as Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Now, the reason for that was actually pretty interesting, but I will get into more of that as I keep reviewing the books. But first, Blood of Sanguinius. It opens up on a crusade in Imperium Nihilus, which is a side of the galaxy that has become darkened from Holy Terra. So to put it simply, Mephiston and the BloodAngels are leading a crusade, but Mephiston is on the search for a certain artifact, a certain blade that came down from the Emperor's original crusade. So he finds himself entering a shrine world, which is actually in the thrust of a civil war. And we see someone who proclaims himself as an Emperor's champion, and therefore blessing others with what are believed to be the Emperor's miracles, but are in fact something far, far more sinister, whilst others are interested in finding this artifact in order to protect it. The Blade Petrific, I believe it was called. And their last goal for these usurpers is in fact the Sisters of Silence, which for those of you who don't know, think of nuns with guns. A lot of guns. Mephiston is more concerned with finding this Blade Petrific throughout the entire first book, and I will say, I do like how it is revealed that his own mortal enemy at this rate is actually the Chaos God Tzeentch. So literally this is an entire thing of the BloodAngels versus Tzeentch, to put it simply. And I do like how this is always covered throughout the trilogy, just to remind you who the real enemy is that Mephiston is trying to take on. A literal god of trickery and magic and change. So throughout all of this trilogy, however, I found myself mixed, if I'm going to be completely honest. For one thing, it has a lot of interesting plot points. It does have some good action moments. And yet, all the same, I couldn't find myself as hooked as I was with something like, say, the Black Legion or the Fabius Bile trilogy, or like the Gaunt's Ghosts, for instance. It found something lacking. Now, Darius Hinks is not a bad writer, I will say that right now. But the main issue that I saw here was a lack of personal engagement. Like, For instance, Mephiston is such a powerful psyker that it makes it really, how do I put this? It makes it very underwhelming when you just know that he can just overpower every single opponent that he's up against, no matter what the odds are. He essentially will just come out of it almost unscathed and just blasting away with psychic abilities. Hell, at one point, I remember seeing him drawing himself on like these cyclones of rage, and it actually reminded me of Dracula's special move from Castlevania Lord of Shadows 2. But back to the books. With Mephiston Revenant Crusade, that is one where it actually managed to grab my attention just a little bit more because of the enemies that Mephiston was facing. So in Book 1, it's essentially a bunch of humans who are being led by a false icon of the Emperor, but is in fact a champion of Tzeentch. In Book 2, Revenant Crusade, it is the BloodAngels versus the Necrons. And seeing as how I rarely ever see them in battle, the Space Marines fighting Necrons, this one held a lot more interest for me. And yet I always found it lacking again. But there were some more interesting imagery, like for one, there was just this absolute nightmare image of Mephiston with his skin completely peeled off, and his whole entire quarters are filled with just bodies everywhere. Bodies of the victims that he has slain in battle. And what I found more interesting is that while he is studying, trying to find a way to defeat Tzeentch, he is surrounded by the souls of those whom he has slain, thereby earning him the moniker Lord of Death, which makes a lot more sense after seeing this image. But more than that, he finds out that the main way to enter the warp is by disabling this machine that is blocking them on a Necron tomb world. I will say, it was actually fascinating to see more of the Necrons here. In fact, I actually got a glimpse of their hierarchy. And if I'm going to be completely honest, the Necrons had this sort of ancient Egyptian style of culture, which I thought was fascinating, actually. You have the High King, you have everyone else, but you have all these minor kingdoms, each one vying for power, all the way throughout. And the dynasty that Mephiston is up against is more obsessed with trying to earn their way back into the galaxy, as well as raising up their power within the Necron society. However, the ruler in charge is not exactly keen on this, and instead he wants to go out in a blaze of sacrifice. But, in all honesty, we all know how this ends. Mephiston ends up winning, and it seems like he's getting closer to his victory. But let's move on to some of these characters, shall we? So to keep this simple, I would say the three most interesting characters that I saw here were Mephiston himself, as well as the two librarians that he worked with, Raculus and Antros. Now what's funny is that Raculus knew Mephiston back when he was known as Calistarius, and Raculus, I believe, actually functions as a unique point. He is unique in the fact that he is essentially Mephiston's anchor to his original name. He is a link to Mephiston. He reminds him of who he once was and keeps him grounded. Andros is more of the student type character. He wants to learn from Mephiston, he wants to one day surpass him in some way. But I do see Andros's path, as of Book 2, going down a darker route. So, to put in context, while Raculus is the one who wants to keep Mephiston grounded, Antros has this complex of seeing Mephiston as like a freaking demigod. But at one point he tries to help his chief librarian to find a way to cure what ails him with all the spirits attacking his mind and leaving him unable to think and driving him to almost to the point of the Black Rage once again. But Antros, he ends up trying to find a way. He actually encounters another Space Marine chapter where it is revealed that they created something called the Sleepless Mile, a technique to sort of block out the warp and keep them focused despite their proximity to the Great Rift, which is literally just a storm cloud of warp energy. However, the reason why I'm unsure of Antros' fate is the fact that, for one, it seems like the closer he gets, the more he's possibly being manipulated by Tzeentch, as described by some of the imagery that I've seen in the book. The dreams that he has, in fact, it is revealed that the Space Marine captain who was teaching him the Sleep of the Smile was in fact possibly corrupted by Tzeentch. And that alone is a horrifying thought, to be corrupted by Tzeentch. But let's move on to what I think for the books themselves. So all in all, these books were not bad. They weren't bad at all. But they failed to simply just grab my attention as much as some of the other books that I've read have. But if you guys think I should finish the trilogy, for those of you who have read this story, please let me know in the comment section down below, as I'd like to hear your all's opinions on whether or not I should finish this trilogy, just to wrap it up. But also, for those of you who are interested in seeing some of the BloodAngels, I do actually recommend this trilogy, as it is fascinating to see some of the BloodAngels work, what they do, besides how they wage war and everything else, not to mention BloodAngel Psychers. Essentially, they are just throwing spells everywhere. But I'll leave it all up to you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, if I should finish this trilogy or not. But let's move on to the final slide, shall we? So an overall score for the Mephiston Trilogy right now would be a 7 out of 10. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. It's in the middle. It has good characters, it has somewhat of an interesting plot, but it's the engagement that really makes it a bit of a hard one to read. But for those of you who are interested in other character trilogies like this one, I would actually recommend the Ahriman trilogy, starting with Ahriman Exile. Or, if you're more interested in the mad scientist route instead of the magic route, check out Fabius Bile's trilogy with Fabius Bile Primogenitor. Now the funny thing is, I have covered Fabius Bile's trilogy in another video. If you're interested, go ahead and check it out on my Warhammer 40k Rambles playlist, or if you'd like to see the video itself, I will leave a link to it in the comment section. If you guys are stuck around at the end of this video, thank you so much for listening, and if you have any other book recommendations for me, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I will get to them when I can and give them a review. Anyways, you guys, thank you all again for listening, and this is Rambling Collector, signing off. Have an amazing day.